The man I trusted with my daughter's education, her traumatized and unable to speak. When I demanded answers, his wife laughed and told me, "Be careful about making accusations you can't prove." I didn't respond. That was 10 months ago. Today, she's begging me to drop my opposition to his parole. My daughter was 13 when I sent her to the Gaeltacht in Ireland. For those who don't know, it's a summer camp you go to in 7th or 8th grade with activities like kayaking or ziplining. There's just one catch. You have to speak Irish. The punishment isn't meant to be anything severe. You just get given out to or sent home. So like I said, my daughter was 13 when she went. She was the bubbly type, the type who'd organize games at recess and somehow get even the shy kids to join in. And she was the one who begged me to send her. I figured it was better than sitting around the house all day, so I agreed and paid for her to spend 3 weeks in the Irish camp in Galway. She left with a huge smile on her face and a suitcase that was almost the same size as her. Fast forward 3 weeks later, she came home and the car ride was completely silent. I figured she was probably just a little exhausted from the long bus ride, so I let her sleep and decided to talk about it in the morning. Except during breakfast the next morning, she wouldn't eat, just pushed food around her plate, staring at nothing. "Dia do it, hello in Irish," I exclaimed, trying to lighten the mood. But instead of saying anything back or just exhaling a laugh, she flinched, actually flinched, like I'd raised my hand to her. "It was fine," she whispered, then asked to be excused. That night, I woke to the sound of her crying, not normal teenage tears. These were deep, gasping sobs. When I knocked on her door, she went silent immediately. "I'm fine, Dad," she called out, but her voice was shaking. The next few days were worse. She'd jump at every little sound. The neighbor's dog barked and she dropped her glass, shattering it on the kitchen floor. When I reached to help clean it up, she scrambled away from me like she was terrified. She started sleeping with every light in her room on. "Tara, love, what happened at the camp?" I tried asking again, using the gentlest voice I could manage. She shook her head violently. "Nothing happened. Can we not talk about it?" But she wasn't eating properly, wasn't showering unless I reminded her. This child who used to sing in the shower, who'd chat my ear off about everything and nothing, had become a ghost in our house. A week later, I got a group text from other parents, the girls in her school that had gone to Galway with her. "Have you noticed anything strange about your kid since he came back? He won't speak Irish anymore," Mary said. More texts revealed the same pattern. Kids who'd left excited came back traumatized. Night terrors, anxiety attacks. One boy hadn't even left his house in a week. Another girl was found hiding in her wardrobe, convinced someone was coming for her. That evening, Tara finally broke. I'd made her favorite dinner, shepherd's pie, and she was picking at it when she suddenly started crying. The story came out in pieces between sobs. "They punished us for speaking English," she cried. I didn't understand what she was talking about, but then she continued. "Turns out, if you spoke English, even by accident, even in your sleep, you were punished, not just given out to. Real punishment. The first strike was standing barefoot on gravel for an hour. Second offense was ice baths at midnight. Third strike meant the hole, a storage room under the main building with no windows, no light. Kids were left there for up to 12 hours. No food, no water, a bucket in the corner. I lunged at her for a hug, just wanting to hold my baby girl, but she pushed me off and just kept blurting out more and more gruesome details. The counselors had created a system where kids monitored each other. If you heard someone speak English and didn't report it, you got their punishment plus the adults. By week 2, everyone was paranoid. Best friends were turning each other in. My hands were shaking as she talked. This was my fault. I'd sent her there, paid for it, dropped her off with a smile and a wave while she walked into that place. She showed me her arms, bruises, faded to sick yellow-green now, but I could see the finger marks. "The officers did this," she said. Officers. They were kids too, just older ones. Previous Gaeltacht students who'd been through the program and came back to enforce it. I called the camp that night, got through to the director somehow. "These are proven immersion techniques," he said, like we were discussing teaching methods, not torture. "Your daughter's Irish improved remarkably. You should be proud." I was ready to go nuclear. I hung up and started pacing the kitchen, my mind racing through options. Tara had gone upstairs, exhausted from finally telling someone what happened. I could hear her moving around in her room, probably checking the locks on her windows again. She'd been doing that every night since she came home. I grabbed my laptop and started searching for information about the camp. Their website showed smiling kids playing traditional Irish games, testimonials from happy parents. Nothing about the punishments, nothing about the hole. I dug deeper, checking parent forums and social media groups. That's when I found it. A Facebook post from 3 years ago, buried in the comments of a local Galway news article. A mother asking if anyone else's child had come home from the Gaeltacht acting strange. The post had been deleted, but someone had screenshot it. The comments underneath were telling, parents dismissing her concerns, saying kids always complained about camp, telling her she was overreacting. I kept digging, found more deleted posts, more concerned parents who'd been shut down. Always the same pattern. Kid comes home traumatized, parent tries to speak up, gets told they're being dramatic. I started taking screenshots of everything. My phone buzzed. Another message in the parent group chat, this time from Catherine, whose son Benjamin had been in Tara's group. She was asking if anyone wanted to meet up, compare notes. Within minutes, 5 other parents had agreed. We set a meeting for the next evening at my house. I went to check on Tara. She was sitting on her bed, surrounded by the Irish language books she'd been so excited about before camp. One by one, she was tearing out pages, crumpling them up, throwing them in her wastebasket. I didn't stop her. The next day, I called in sick to work, spent the morning on the phone with other parents, gathering information. Each story was worse than the last. Benji had been put in the hole for accidentally saying okay instead of Sart go Leor. He'd panicked in the dark, hyperventilated until he passed out. When they found him hours later, he was barely conscious. Another girl, Catherine, had tried to refuse the ice bath punishment. The counselors, those older kids they called officers, had forced her in, held her there while she screamed. She still couldn't take cold showers without having a panic attack. I was documenting everything when Tara came downstairs around noon. She looked like she'd barely slept, dark circles under her eyes. She saw my laptop, saw the notes I was taking. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice small. "I'm going to make sure they never do this to another kid," I told her. She stared at me for a long moment, then sat down beside me. "There's more," she whispered. "Things I didn't tell you." My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. "You can tell me when you're ready." She shook her head. "No, you need to know. For the other kids." She took a shaky breath. "The director has a daughter. She's only 10, but she was there with us. They did it to her too. The punishments. Her own parents. I saw her in the hole once when they opened it to put someone else in. She was just sitting there in the dark, not even crying anymore. I felt sick. These people were doing this to their own child. Had been for who knows how long. And the counselors," Tara continued. "The officers. I recognized some of them. They were kids from our town who'd gone to the Gaeltacht before. They came back to work there, like they thought it was normal, like they wanted to do it to other kids." The doorbell rang, making us both jump. It was too early for the parent meeting. I looked through the peephole and saw a young man, maybe 18 or 19, shifting nervously on my doorstep. I didn't recognize him. I opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" He glanced around nervously. "Are you Tara's dad?" "First period. I was a counselor at the camp. I need to talk to you." I let him in, watching as Tara shrank back against the wall, but she shook her head when I moved to take her upstairs. She wanted to hear this. The boy's name was Kath, and his story made everything worse. He'd gone to the Gaeltacht 5 years ago, had been subjected to the same punishments. When he turned 18, he'd gone back as a counselor, thinking he could make things better for the kids. But the director had made it clear, enforce the rules or face worse. "I have videos," he said, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. I started recording things. The director's son, he was recording too. We were going to report it after the summer ended, but he trailed off. "But what?" I prompted. "The director found out. His son's phone got confiscated. Mine too, but I'd already backed everything up to the cloud. The director's son, they sent him away, said he was going to stay with relatives, but nobody's heard from him." He showed me the videos. Kids standing on gravel, their feet bleeding, the ice baths, children shaking so hard they could barely stand, the door to the hole with desperate scratching sounds coming from inside. I had to stop watching when I heard a voice that sounded like Tara begging to be let out. "Why didn't you stop it?" I asked, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. Kath looked miserable. "I tried. We all tried. But the director, he's connected. His brother's on the county council. His wife works at the local school. They've been running the camp for 15 years. Anyone who speaks up gets shut down." The parent meeting that night was chaos. 7 families crowded into my living room, all with similar stories. Mary's daughter hadn't spoken Irish since coming home, would have a full panic attack if she even heard it on TV. Catherine's son, Benji, had started wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done since he was 5. We compared notes, built a timeline. The pattern was clear. First week, they broke the kids down with increasingly harsh punishments. Second week, they turned them against each other with the reporting system. Third week, the kids were so traumatized, they'd do anything to avoid more punishment. "We need to go to the authorities," Catherine said. "I already tried," another parent admitted. "Called the Gardaí, Irish police, in Galway. They said without proof, it's just kids complaining about strict camp rules." That's when I remembered Kath's videos. I called him, asked if he could send them to me. While we waited, more stories came out. Kids forced to stand in the rain for hours, being denied food if they spoke English at meals. One boy had developed pneumonia after an ice bath, and they'd refused to call a doctor for days. My phone buzzed. The videos from Kath. I connected my laptop to the TV, and we watched in horrified silence. It was worse seeing it all together. The systematic nature of it. The way the counselors seemed to take pride in enforcing the punishments. "Jesus Christ," Mary whispered. "We paid them to do this to our children. We made a plan. Document everything. Get statements from all the kids who were willing to talk. Find more former counselors who might speak up. Build a case so solid that nobody could ignore it." After everyone left, I found Tara in the kitchen, making tea. Her hands were steadier than they'd been in days. "Are you really going to stop them?" she asked. "I'm going to try," I promised. She nodded slowly. "Good, because there are kids signed up for next summer. I saw the list in the office when I was..." She paused, swallowed hard. "When I was being punished. Dozens of kids. They can't go through what we did." Over the next few days, our group grew. More parents reached out, some from previous years. The stories went back over a decade. Always the same methods, the same trauma. We found 3 former counselors willing to write statements, though they all insisted on anonymity. They were terrified of the director and his connections. I tried calling the camp again, hoping to record the director defending his methods. But this time, his wife answered. She knew who I was. "You're that troublemaker parent," she said coldly. "The one spreading lies about our program. You should know my husband is consulting with our solicitor. If you continue this harassment, we'll take legal action. Your program tortured children," I said, trying to stay calm, "including your own daughter." There was a pause. "Our methods build character. If your child was too weak to handle it, that's not our fault. And I'd be careful about making accusations you can't prove." She hung up. An hour later, I got an email from a law firm warning me about defamation and threatening legal action if I continued spreading malicious rumors about the camp. I forwarded it to our parent group. Instead of backing down, it made everyone more determined. We'd all seen our children suffer. We weren't going to be bullied into silence. That night, Tara had another nightmare. I heard her screaming and ran to her room. She was thrashing in her bed, crying out in Irish, "Na fag me anseo, na fag me. Don't leave me here. Don't leave me." I sat with her until she calmed down, rubbing her back like I used to when she was small. When she finally fell back asleep, I went downstairs and opened my laptop, started writing everything down. Every detail, every story, every piece of evidence we'd gathered. The camp had been operating for 15 years. How many children had they traumatized in that time? How many parents had been silenced? How many kids had grown up thinking this was normal, then come back to inflict the same torture on others? I thought about the director's daughter, only 10 years old, sitting alone in that dark hole. About his son, who'd tried to document the abuse and was now mysteriously gone. About all the kids who were already signed up for next summer, whose parents had no idea what they were walking into. I kept writing until the sun came up. This wasn't going to be easy. The director had connections, resources, a legal team, but he'd made one mistake. He'd hurt our children, and there was nothing more dangerous than parents protecting their kids. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. It was a woman, speaking quietly like she was afraid of being overheard. "I'm the nurse who worked at the camp this summer," she said. "I heard you're gathering evidence. I have photos, medical documentation, things they told me not to record. Can we meet?" I arranged to meet the nurse at a coffee shop in town that afternoon. My hands were still shaking as I drove there, thinking about what she might have documented. Tara had wanted to come, but I convinced her to stay home and rest. She needed time to heal, not to relive more trauma. The nurse, Siobhan, was already there when I arrived. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes matching Tara's. She had a folder clutched against her chest like armor. "I've been carrying this guilt since July," she said without preamble. "I should have done something sooner, should have reported it immediately, but they threatened my nursing license, said they'd make sure I never worked with children again." She slid the folder across the table. Inside were photographs that made my stomach turn. Bruised arms, raw feet, a boy's back covered in scratches from being dragged across gravel, medical notes documenting hypothermia symptoms, untreated infections, signs of severe psychological distress. "This is just from this summer," Siobhan said, "but I talked to the nurse who worked there before me. She quit after 1 week, said she couldn't be part of it. The director told everyone she had a family emergency." I studied the photos, matching injuries to the stories I'd heard. There was Catherine's frostbitten fingers from the ice bath, Benjamin's infected cuts on his feet, and in one photo, barely visible in the background, I could see the door to the hole. "The director's daughter," I said. "Did you treat her?" Siobhan's face crumpled multiple times. That poor child, 10 years old and covered in bruises. Her mother brought her to me after she'd been in the hole for 8 hours, said she needed to learn respect for the language. I wanted to call child services, but his brother is on the council," I finished. She nodded. "And his wife teaches at 3 different schools. They know everyone, control everything. I've seen them destroy people who cross them. I took photos of everything with my phone, creating backups." Siobhan gave me her contact information but warned me she was planning to leave town soon. "The stress was culling her," she said. "The guilt of not protecting those kids." When I got home, I found Tara in the living room with another girl from camp. Awif, I remembered. Her parents had been in our group chat but hadn't come to the meeting. "Awif's parents don't believe her," Tara said quietly. "They think she's exaggerating." Awif looked broken. She showed me her journal, pages and pages of neat handwriting documenting every day at camp, the punishments she'd witnessed, the ones she'd endured. Her parents had found it and accused her of making things up for attention. "They're friends with the director's wife," Awif said. "She called them, told them I was a troublemaker at camp, that I refused to participate and made up stories when I was disciplined." I photographed her journal pages with her permission. Another piece of evidence. Another child failed by adults who should have protected her. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "You need to stop." The voice was young, male, scared. "This is the director's son. Please, you don't understand what they're capable of." "Where are you?" I asked. "Are you safe?" "They sent me to my uncle's in Cork, but I'll be back soon, and when I come back," his voice broke, "they'll make me work at the camp next summer. Make me do what they do. I can't. I won't. But if you keep pushing, they'll know I've been talking to people. We can protect you," I said, though I wasn't sure how. He laughed bitterly. "No one can protect anyone from them. They've been doing this for 15 years. My grandfather started it. It's tradition, they say. Character building. They did it to my father when he was young. Now he does it to others, including me, including my sister." "The recordings," I said. "Kath mentioned you had recordings. They destroyed my phone, but I uploaded some to a cloud account they don't know about. I'll send you the login, but please be careful. They have people everywhere." The line went dead. Minutes later, I received an email with login credentials. What I found made everything else pale in comparison. Hours of audio recordings. The director instructing counselors on punishment techniques. Children crying in the background. His own voice, cold and methodical, explaining how to break a child's spirit without leaving permanent physical marks. One recording stood out. The director talking to his wife about a parent who'd complained 5 years ago. How they'd planted rumors about the family. Got the father fired from his job. Made their life so miserable they'd moved away within 6 months. "This is what happens when people don't respect the program," he said on the recording. "We protect what we've built, whatever it takes." I backed up everything immediately, sending copies to multiple cloud services, emailing files to myself, even putting some on USB drives I hid around the house. I was becoming paranoid, but I had reason to be. The next morning, I woke to find my car tires slashed. All 4 of them. No note, no obvious evidence, but the message was clear. When I called the police, they took a report, but seemed uninterested. "Probably just vandals," the officer said, though we lived in a quiet neighborhood where nothing like this had ever happened. Tara saw the tires from her bedroom window. "They're trying to scare us," she said. She was right, but I wasn't going to let them win. "We're not backing down," I told her. "Not when we're this close." That afternoon, Catherine called in tears. Her son Benjamin had finally opened up about something worse. There was another punishment, one the kids hadn't talked about initially. They called it the silent treatment, but it was more than just being ignored. If you received this punishment, you ceased to exist for everyone at camp. No one could look at you, speak to you, or acknowledge your presence. You got your meals separately, ate alone, slept in a different building. Some kids endured this for days. He said it was worse than the hole, Catherine sobbed. "At least in the hole, you knew it would end. The silent treatment could go on indefinitely. One girl had it for a whole week. She tried to hurt herself just to make someone notice her. I added this to our growing documentation. The psychological torture was as bad as the physical abuse, maybe worse. These kids would carry these scars forever. That evening, we held another parent meeting. This time, 12 families showed up. Word was spreading. Parents were comparing notes, realizing the patterns. The same lies told to everyone, the same dismissals of their concerns. But we also had a problem. 3 families who'd initially been supportive had gone quiet. When I called them, they were evasive. One father finally admitted they'd received a letter from a law firm threatening legal action if they participated in spreading defamatory content about the camp. "I can't risk it," he said. "I own a small business. They could ruin me." The director was fighting back, using his connections to intimidate intimidate parents into silence, but he'd miscalculated. The more he pushed, the angrier we became. Mary's daughter had started talking more about her experience. She revealed that the counselors had a ranking system. Kids who broke the fastest, who became the most compliant, were rewarded with small privileges, extra food, a few minutes of hot water for showers, permission to write letters home, though those letters were heavily monitored. They wanted us to compete, she said, to see who could be the most Irish, who could forget English the fastest. They made us prove our loyalty by reporting others first. I reported my best friend. She spoke English in her sleep. I knew she couldn't control it, but I was so scared of being punished again. The guilt these kids carried was immense. They'd been forced to betray friends, to participate in each other's suffering. It was a systematic breakdown of trust and compassion. I decided to reach out to local journalists, hoping media attention might force action. But every reporter I contacted seemed uninterested. One finally told me off the record that the director's brother had significant influence over local media through advertising contracts with his construction company. This story is radioactive, the journalist said. No one will touch it. We were being stonewalled at every turn, but then Kath called with a breakthrough. He'd connected with 5 other former counselors who were willing to speak out. They were planning to meet with us as a group. Safety in numbers. The meeting was scheduled for Friday evening at my house, but Thursday night, Kath called in a panic. 2 of the counselors had received visits from the director himself. He'd shown up at their homes, reminding them of the confidentiality agreements they'd signed, threatening to sue them for breach of contract if they spoke about camp operations. He knows, Kath said. He knows everything we're planning. Someone's feeding him information. I realized with a chill that someone in our parent group was reporting back to the director. But who? Everyone seemed genuinely traumatized, genuinely angry. How could any parent side with him after what he'd done? Friday arrived, and only Kath and 1 other counselor showed up. Her name was Orla, and she'd worked at the camp for 2 summers before quitting in disgust. She brought her own evidence, photos she'd taken secretly, showing the punishment schedule posted in the counselors' quarters. It detailed exactly how long each punishment should last, how to escalate them, how to document which kids had received what. It was like a business, Orla said. They had spreadsheets tracking everything. Which kids broke fastest, which punishments were most effective. They were collecting data on how to traumatize children more efficiently. She also revealed something that made my blood run cold. The camp had a special program for problem children, kids whose parents specifically requested extra discipline. These children faced harsher punishments from day one. The parents paid extra for this service. Did any of our kids? I couldn't finish the question. Orla checked her photos of the lists. I'm sorry, she said quietly. 3 children from your group were on that list. The room erupted, parents demanding to know if their child was on the list, accusations flying about who would request such a thing, trust breaking down just like it had among the children at camp. I tried to restore order, but the damage was done. By the end of the meeting, our unified group had splintered. Some parents couldn't believe anyone would pay for extra punishment. Others were defensive, saying they'd only wanted their kids to take the language seriously. After everyone left, I sat with Tara, both of us exhausted. It's falling apart, she said. No, I told her firmly. This is what he wants. To divide us. To make us fight each other instead of him. We're not going to let that happen. But over the weekend, more cracks appeared. Parents started receiving phone calls from the director's wife in her capacity as a teacher. She expressed concern about their children's well-being, suggested they might benefit from counseling to deal with their adjustment issues after camp. The underlying threat was clear. She had access to their children during school hours. Monday morning, I went to work to find my boss waiting for me. Someone had sent an anonymous email to the company, claiming I was unstable, harassing a legitimate business, neglecting my work to pursue a vendetta. My boss was sympathetic, but concerned. I know you're going through something with your daughter, he said, but I can't have this affecting the company. Take some time off, sort this out, but if it continues to interfere, I took the forced leave, knowing it was exactly what the director wanted, to isolate me, make me seem unreliable, unstable, but it also gave me more time to fight back. That afternoon, I got an unexpected call. It was the director's mother, speaking in a shaky voice. I need to see you, she said. What my son is doing. It's not what I intended when we started the camp. Can you meet me tomorrow? I agreed, hope flaring. If the camp's co-founder was willing to speak out, it could change everything. We arranged to meet at her home the next morning, but that night, Tara woke me in a panic. She'd received a message on social media from a fake account. It was a photo from camp, her standing in punishment, crying. The message said simply, stop your father or everyone will see. They were threatening to humiliate her publicly if I didn't back down. I held my daughter as she cried, fury building inside me. Using the children's trauma against them was a new low, even for them. I screenshot the message and added it to our evidence. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I created my own anonymous blog, uploading everything. The photos, the recordings, the testimonies, all of it. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd make sure the truth was out there. Within hours, the blog had hundreds of views, parents sharing it in private groups, former students commenting with their own stories. It was spreading faster than they could stop it. The next morning, I drove to meet the director's mother, but when I arrived at her house, an ambulance was pulling away. A neighbor told me she'd fallen down the stairs during the night, severe head injury. She was unconscious, unable to speak. The timing was too convenient, too perfect, but there was no proof of foul play. Just another obstacle in our path, another voice silenced. I drove home to find a police car in my driveway. The officers had a warrant to search my property based on allegations of harassment and cyberstalking. They confiscated my laptop, my phone, boxes of documents, everything we'd gathered. This is intimidation, I told them. One officer looked sympathetic but said nothing. They were just doing their job, following orders, the system protecting itself. Tara watched from the window as they drove away with our evidence. What do we do now? She asked. I hugged her tight. We don't give up. We've come too far, and we're not alone anymore. She was right. The blog had taken on a life of its own. More stories poured in every hour. Parents from previous years, former counselors, even some local officials who'd suspected something but never had proof. The director could confiscate my devices, but he couldn't stop the avalanche we'd started. That evening, Catherine called. The nurse, Siobhan, had agreed to go public. She was scared, but determined. These children deserve justice, she said. I should have protected them then. I'll protect them now. We arranged for her to meet with a lawyer the next day. Someone from Dublin, outside the director's sphere of influence. But that night, Siobhan's apartment was broken into. Her laptop stolen. Her backup drives gone. She called me in tears, terrified. They knew exactly what to take, she said. Nothing else was touched, just the evidence. But Siobhan was smarter than they realized. She'd mailed copies of everything to her sister in England days earlier. The evidence was safe, just hard harder to access. We'd have to be more careful, more strategic. The director's son reached out again, this time through an encrypted messaging app. He was being brought back from Cork early. His parents were suspicious of his communications, but he had one last piece of information. There's a safety deposit box, he wrote. My grandmother set it up years ago. She kept records of everything, the real financial documents, proof of what they've been doing. She gave me the key before they sent me away, told me to use it if I ever needed to stop them. He sent a photo of the key and the bank information, but he warned me his parents were watching him constantly now. This would be his last message. He was deleting everything, trying to survive until he could escape. I knew I had to get to that safety deposit box, but I also knew they'd be watching me, following my movements, waiting for me to make a mistake. That's when Mary had an idea. They can't follow all of us, she said. Let's make them choose. We organized carefully. The next morning, every parent in our group went to a different bank. We'd made copies of the key, though only I had the real one. While they scrambled to follow multiple targets, I slipped into the right bank unnoticed. The safety deposit box contained everything the grandmother had promised. Financial records showing payments from parents for enhanced discipline, documentation of injuries going back years, letters from parents who'd complained and the threats used to silence them, even a confession of sorts, a journal where the director's father detailed the punishment methods he'd developed, proud of his system for building character through suffering. I photographed everything, uploaded it immediately to multiple secure servers. This was the proof we needed, not just of abuse, but of conspiracy, fraud, systematic child endangerment. As I left the bank, I noticed a familiar car following me, the director's wife. She stayed 3 cars back, but I could see her face in the mirror, cold, determined, furious. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the police station, not the local one, the regional headquarters an hour away. I walked in with printed copies of everything and demanded to speak to someone in Child Protection Services. This time, they listened. The evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. The financial fraud alone would trigger an investigation. Add the documented child abuse, and even the director's connections couldn't protect him. By evening, word had spread that authorities were finally taking action. Parents in our group cried with relief. Their children had been heard, believed, validated, but the director wasn't finished. That night, Tara's school called. There'd been an incident. Someone had distributed photos of children from the camp, including Tara, in various punishments. The humiliation she'd feared had come to pass. I raced to pick her up, finding her in the principal's office, shaking. Other kids had seen the photos, laughed, made jokes about the weak kids who couldn't handle camp. The principal was sympathetic but overwhelmed. Several children were affected. Parents were furious. This is what fighting back looks like, Tara said quietly in the car. He hurts us even when we win. But something beautiful happened over the next few days. The other kids from camp, the ones who'd been humiliated alongside Tara, banded together. They supported each other, spoke openly about their experiences. What the director intended as shame became strength. More former students came forward. A teacher at Tara's school revealed she'd attended the camp 20 years ago. She still couldn't speak Irish without anxiety. A local shopkeeper admitted his son had attempted sewer slide after returning from the camp a decade ago. The director's web of silence was unraveling. The investigation moved quickly. Financial records were subpoenaed. The camp was ordered closed pending review. The director and his wife were brought in for questioning. Other counselors, faced with potential charges, began cooperating with authorities. But in our moment of victory, tragedy struck. The director's son was found at the bottom of a cliff near his uncle's home in Cork. The official report called it an accident. He'd been hiking alone, slipped and fell. But those of us who'd heard his fear, his desperation, wondered. Tara took it hardest. He tried to help us, she said through tears, and now he's gone. We held a quiet memorial for him. The brave boy who'd risked everything to expose his parents' cruelty. His recordings had been crucial evidence. His courage had saved future children from suffering. The director, facing mounting charges, tried one last manipulation. He offered settlements to all affected families. Significant money in exchange for silence. Some families, exhausted and needing closure, considered accepting. Don't let him buy his way out, Tara said at our final parent meeting. Please, the money won't heal us. Only justice will. Her words swayed those who were wavering. We stood united, refusing his blood money. The investigation would continue. The truth would be told. As autumn arrived, the camp remained closed. The director and several counselors faced criminal charges. The director's wife was suspended from teaching pending investigation. Their empire of fear was crumbling. Tara slowly began to heal. She joined a support group for camp survivors, started seeing a therapist who specialized in institutional abuse. Some days were harder than others, but she was reclaiming her voice. One evening, she surprised me. I want to learn Irish again, she said, but properly this time, without fear, without punishment. I want to take back what they stole from me. We found a gentle tutor, a grandmother who taught through songs and stories. Watching Tara slowly rediscover joy in the language was like watching a flower bloom after a harsh winter. The legal process would take months, maybe years, but we'd done what we set out to do. We'd protected future children. We'd exposed the truth. We'd shown our kids that their pain mattered, that adults would fight for them. The director's mother eventually woke from her coma, but remembered nothing of the fall. She seemed confused when told about the camp's closure, insisting her son would never hurt children. The investigation into her accident remained open, but unsolved. As winter approached, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a USB drive containing hundreds of photos and videos from inside the camp spanning 15 years. A note said simply, for the children who couldn't speak, from someone who should have acted sooner. I turned it over to authorities, adding to the mountain of evidence. Every piece mattered. Every voice counted. Every child deserved justice. The camp building stood empty now, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Local teens said it was haunted, that you could hear children crying at night. Maybe they could. The walls had absorbed so much pain, so much fear, but ghosts couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Our fight had cost us all something. Jobs, friendships, peace of mind. But watching our children slowly heal, seeing them support each other, knowing we'd prevented future suffering, it was worth every sacrifice. The director's trial date was set for spring. We'd all have to testify, relive the trauma once more, but we'd do it together. Parents and children united in truth, demanding justice, refusing to be silenced. As I write this, Tara is in the next room, practicing Irish with her tutor. She's singing a traditional song, her voice growing stronger with each verse. The language that once triggered panic now brings her joy. She's taking it back, word by word, phrase by phrase. That's what victory looks like. Not the director in handcuffs, though that matters. Not the camp closed forever, though that's crucial. Victory is my daughter singing in Irish again, choosing to reclaim what was weaponized against her. Victory is every child who survived that place learning to trust again. Every parent who fought despite threats and intimidation. Every counselor who found the courage to speak truth to power. The Gaeltacht was meant to preserve Irish language and culture. Instead, one man's twisted vision had perverted it into something cruel and destructive. But culture is resilient. Language survives. And children, given love and support, can heal from almost anything. We'd won this battle, but the war continued. Other camps, other institutions, other adults who abuse power over children. Our story had inspired other parents to look closer, ask questions, demand transparency. Change comes slowly, but it comes. One voice becomes two, two become 10, 10 become 100. And suddenly, the silence that protected abusers for decades shatters like glass. Tara finished her song and came to show me her notebook. She'd written a poem in Irish about resilience, about finding light in darkness. Her handwriting was steady, confident. The trembling girl who'd come home from camp was growing into a fierce young woman. I'm thinking about becoming a teacher, she said. Maybe working with kids who've been through trauma, showing them they can heal. I hugged her tight. This brave daughter of mine who'd survived hell and chosen hope, who'd faced her demons and decided to help others face theirs, who'd refused to let cruelty define her story. The camp had tried to break her. Instead, it had revealed her strength, and in revealing hers, she'd helped dozens of other children find theirs. That's a legacy worth fighting for, a future worth protecting. The director thought fear was power. He was wrong. Love is power. Truth is power. And a parent's determination to protect their child is the most powerful force of all. The director's trial was scheduled to begin in 2 weeks when I got the call that changed everything. The prosecutor needed to meet with us urgently. Something had happened with the evidence. I drove to her office with Tara, both of us tense. The prosecutor, a woman named Deirdre who'd taken our case seriously from day one, looked grim. The director's legal team filed a motion, she explained. They're claiming the evidence from the safety deposit box was obtained illegally, that you had no right to access it. My stomach dropped. But his son gave me the key. His grandmother wanted. Without written authorization, it's complicated, Deirdre interrupted. The judge is considering whether to allow it as evidence. Tara gripped my hand. We both knew what this meant. Without those financial records, without the grandfather's journal detailing the punishment methods, our case was significantly weaker. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with the other parents. The mood was dark. Some families were already talking about accepting the director's settlement offers, convinced the case would fall apart. We can't give up now, Catherine insisted. Our children deserve better. But I could see the exhaustion in everyone's faces. Months of fighting, of reliving trauma, of watching our kids struggle. The director's lawyers were doing exactly what they'd planned, wearing us down through legal attrition. Then Mary's daughter spoke up. What if we testified? All of us kids? Not just written statements, but in court? The room went silent. These children had been through enough. Asking them to face their abuser, to relive their trauma publicly, seemed cruel. I want to do it, Tara said quietly. I want to look him in the eye and tell everyone what he did. One by one, other children nodded. They were braver than any of us adults. Over the next week, Deirdre prepared the children for testimony. She was gentle but thorough, making sure they understood what would happen in court. The director's lawyers would try to discredit them, make them seem like dramatic teenagers exaggerating normal camp discipline. 3 days before the trial, another blow. Siobhan called in a panic. Her sister's house in England had been broken into. The backup evidence she'd mailed there was gone. Someone had been watching, waiting. They knew, Siobhan said, her voice shaking. They knew exactly where I'd sent it. I realized then how deep this went. The director's network was more extensive than we'd imagined, but it also meant he was desperate. You don't go to these lengths unless you're terrified of losing. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I found Tara in the kitchen at 3 a.m., making tea with shaking hands. What if they don't believe us? She asked. I pulled her into a hug. Then we'll keep fighting. We'll appeal. We'll go to the media. We won't stop. She nodded against my chest, and I felt her tears soaking through my shirt. The courthouse was packed the next morning. Parents, children, former counselors, local media, despite the director's attempts to bar them. The director sat at the defense table looking confident, his wife beside him, but I noticed his hands trembling as he adjusted his tie. The prosecutor opened with the facts. Systematic abuse disguised as language immersion. Children tortured for speaking their native language. Financial fraud, with parents paying extra for enhanced discipline that amounted to enhanced abuse. The director's lawyer painted a different picture. A dedicated educator using proven techniques. Children who couldn't handle structure. Parents looking for someone to blame for their kids' difficulties. Then came the testimony. Catherine went first, her voice barely above a whisper as she described the ice baths, how they'd held her down when she tried to get out, how her fingers turned blue and she couldn't feel them for hours afterward. The defense lawyer challenged her. Isn't it true you were a difficult student? That you repeatedly broke camp rules? I spoke English in my sleep, Catherine said, louder now. I couldn't control it. Benjamin testified about the hole, the darkness, the panic, passing out from hyperventilation and waking up still trapped. The defense tried to minimize it. Just a storage room, a timeout space. There were scratch marks on the walls, Benjamin said, from all the kids before me trying to claw their way out. Parent after parent took the stand. Catherine describing her son's night terrors. Mary talking about her daughter's panic attacks at the sound of Irish. The pattern was undeniable. Then Kath testified. As a former counselor, his testimony was crucial. He described the training they'd received, the punishment schedules, the way they were taught to break children's spirits. Why did you participate? The prosecutor asked. Because I'd been through it myself, Kath said, looking directly at the director. I thought it was normal. They made us believe it was the only way to preserve our language. The defense attacked his credibility. He was bitter about being fired. He was exaggerating to get revenge. But Kath held firm, detailing specific incidents, naming other counselors who'd participated. On day 3, Orla took the stand with her photos of the punishment schedules. The defense claimed they were fabricated, but she'd been smart. The metadata on the images proved when and where they were taken. The most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. A woman named Bridget, who'd worked as the camp secretary for 10 years. She'd kept copies of everything. Emails, financial records, correspondence with parents who'd complained. I was afraid to speak up, she admitted. But when I heard about that boy, she paused, tears in her eyes. The director's son. I trained him when he was little. He was a good boy. What happened to him wasn't an accident. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. The defense objected furiously, but Bridget continued. I heard the director on the phone that night, telling someone his son had become a problem, that he needed to be handled. The next day, we got word about the accident. I felt Tara's hand squeeze mine so tight it hurt. We'd all suspected, but hearing it confirmed was devastating. The director's wife took the stand in his defense. She painted a picture of a dedicated educator, a loving father, a man who devoted his life to preserving Irish culture. The children who complained were weak, pampered, unable to handle discipline. What about your own daughter? The prosecutor asked. She was subjected to the same punishments. Character building, the wife said coldly. It made her stronger. Where's your daughter now? Boarding school in France. Since when? The wife hesitated. Since September, right after we'd started investigating. They'd sent their own child away to keep her from testifying. Finally, it was Tara's turn. My brave girl walked to the witness stand with her head high. She spoke clearly, detailing everything. The punishments, the fear, the way children turned on each other to avoid suffering. The worst part wasn't the physical pain, she said. It was that they made us complicit, made us hurt each other, made us believe we deserved it. The defense lawyer tried to rattle her, suggested she was exaggerating, implied she was seeking attention. I have nightmares every night, Tara said, her voice steady. I flinch when I hear Irish spoken. I used to love that language. They stole that from me. That's not exaggeration. That's my reality. But you're learning Irish again now, aren't you? The lawyer pressed. So it couldn't have been that traumatic. Tara looked him dead in the eye. I'm learning it again because I refuse to let them win. Every word I speak is an act of defiance against what they did to us. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense lawyer seemed taken aback. On the final day of testimony, the prosecutor played the audio recordings the director's son had saved. His father's voice, cold and methodical, instructing counselors on how to break children, how to push them to their limits without leaving marks that parents would question. The director's face went white as his own words condemned him. His wife stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. During closing arguments, the defense made one last attempt. These were time-honored techniques. The parents had signed waivers. The children were being dramatic. No permanent harm was done. The prosecutor's response was was devastating. She showed photos of the bruises, the medical reports, the psychological evaluations. She read from the grandfather's journal, his pride in developing methods to break wild Irish children like horses. This wasn't education, she said. This was systematic child abuse passed down through generations, and it ends now. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours of agony, waiting, wondering. When they finally returned, I could barely breathe. Guilty on all counts. Child endangerment, assault, fraud. The director's face crumpled. His wife let out a sound like a wounded animal. But it wasn't over. Sentencing wouldn't happen for weeks. The other counselors still faced their own trials. The investigation into the director's son's death continued. Outside the courthouse, families hugged and cried. Justice, finally. But it felt hollow somehow. Nothing could give our children back what was taken. That night, the director's mother called me. Her voice was stronger than it had been since her fall. I remember now, she said. I remember what I wanted to tell you. There are more camps. My son helped set them up. Different names, same methods. You've only stopped one. My blood ran cold. We'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Over the following days, investigators used the grandmother's information to identify 3 other camps using the same techniques. Parents pulled their children out in droves. Former students came forward with their own stories of abuse. The director was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His wife got 5. Several counselors received lesser sentences. It wasn't enough. Could never be enough, but it was something. At the sentencing, the director tried one last manipulation. He apologized, claimed he'd lost his way, that he'd only wanted to preserve the language he loved. But when the judge asked if he had anything to say to his victims, he remained silent. As we left the courthouse for the last time, Tara stopped at the bottom of the steps. She pulled out her phone and played a voice recording. It was her, singing in Irish, the same song she'd been practicing with her tutor, but recorded here, at the place where justice was served. For the kids who still can't sing, she said, posting it to the support group's page. Within hours, dozens of other survivors had posted their own recordings, songs, poems, simple phrases in Irish, reclaiming their voices, reclaiming their language. The camp buildings were demolished that winter. The land was donated to build a proper Irish cultural center, one that celebrated the language through joy, not fear. Tara and several other survivors were invited to help plan it. I returned to work, my reputation intact despite the director's attempts to destroy it. The forced leave had been worth it. My boss, who'd followed the trial, apologized for doubting me. Tara's nightmares gradually decreased. She still had bad days, still flinched sometimes at unexpected Irish, but she also laughed more, sang in the shower again, started teaching younger kids Irish through games and stories, the way it should have been taught all along. The support group met monthly, parents and children together, sharing struggles and victories. Some healed faster than others, some might never fully heal, but none of them faced it alone anymore. One evening, as spring arrived, I found Tara writing in her journal, not documenting trauma this time, but writing poetry, in Irish and English, weaving both languages together like threads in a tapestry. I'm applying to university, she announced. Irish studies and psychology. I want to understand how language can heal instead of hurt. I thought of that terrified girl who'd come home from camp 9 months ago, who couldn't eat, couldn't speak, couldn't trust. Now here she was, transforming her pain into purpose. The director's son's case remained officially unsolved, but his recordings lived on, evidence that helped shut down the other camps. His courage saved countless children from suffering. We made sure his name was remembered. Some parents did eventually accept settlements from the camp's insurance company. They needed the money for their children's therapy, for the healing that would take years. No one judged them for it. The ripple effects continued. Schools implemented better oversight for summer programs. Parents asked harder questions. Children learned it was okay to speak up when adults hurt them. Tara graduated from secondary school with honors. At the ceremony, she gave a speech about resilience, about finding your voice after someone tries to silence it. She spoke partly in Irish, the language she'd reclaimed and made her own. As I watched her on that stage, poised and powerful, I thought about the journey we'd taken. The Gael Tacht still exists, of course. Other camps, run by people who actually love children and the Irish language, where kids learn through music and games and stories, where speaking English might earn you a gentle reminder, not torture. Ally. They have no idea what she survived to stand before them whole. That's victory. Not just the guilty verdict or the prison sentences. It's every survivor who chose healing over hatred. The director will be eligible for parole in 8 years. We'll be there to oppose it. All of us. A reminder that some things are unforgivable.